Hey book lovers, welcome back to my channel. Michelle Mahoney here. Today we're going to talk about the benefits of reading. I just recently published an article that I will link down below about the 10 top, what I find the 10 top benefits of reading that I find I succeed in by reading. I feel those things. So there are several different benefits of reading, and we're going to talk about them today because talking about reading is great and sharing my love for them and what I'm reading. But I also want people to understand and know how beneficial it is to your health and to your everyday well-being. And it's not just, you know, reading for fun. There is so much more to it than that. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, right? Okay, one of my top reasons for reading, besides the whole entertainment factor and the fact that I just love to do it, one of the benefits of reading is reducing your anxiety and depression. And that is my favorite part of that, because I really do feel like when you sit down to read, your mind gets in a total different mindset. You're thinking about a story that you're about to read or something factual that you're about to learn, and you're not thinking about doing the dishes and picking the kids up and what you have to do to go shopping and the Christmas presents and all the things. Your brain has a chance to kind of stop all the noise and just focus on something else. And whether we believe it or not, or think about it or not, when we're going throughout our day, anytime that we're getting anxious or angry or just like upset or frustrated, any of like those emotions, our body actually tenses up and you feel that within your body. And when your body is feeling that way, it secretes hormones. I'm not a doctor, so like I don't know the actual like verbiage for you, but I do know that your body ends up producing things that can help you or prevent you from losing weight. It encourages your body to be anxious and depressed and things like that. And so everything that we do with our body does affect us in all ways and things that we just don't necessarily think of. So when you can put yourself in a position where you're reading and you're forgetting all about that stuff, it is actually like really good for your body. And it's almost like being in a meditative state because your body can calm down, your breathing slows down, and just like everything kind of relaxes in your body because you're not thinking about, you know, doing the dishes and going shopping and all the things that we're supposed to be doing. We're just having like a quiet moment to ourselves. So it's really beneficial. On the education side of it, reading improves your vocabulary, it improves your writing, it's great exercise for your brain. It is really great for, you know, the elderly and, you know, the really young ones, right? Because the young ones are learning literacy and they're learning words. And so it's really great for them to not only hear us read to them, but for them to, you know, look at the books and look at the pictures and start learning the words. It is a great way for our brain to expand itself and think outside of our everyday things. The younger ones are learning empathy and they're learning frustration and they're learning strategies about how to overcome different events that are happening in their lives. And they're seeing it from somebody else's point of view. And so that's where our brain really starts to develop and start to say, oh, hey, there is more around me than just me and my world. And I'm able to understand, you know, that some kids have to move schools a lot, or some kids are moving to a new house, or some kids' parents aren't living together anymore and they have to go from house to house. And it's not just one big happy family in one spot. Kids are starting to learn that there is a whole different world outside of what they're used to. And so reading has so many levels for that. And then the elderly, when you're getting older, your brain starts to not work as much, right? Because, well, we don't need it to, or we're not using it as much because we don't need it to, right? The moment you become retired, have you ever heard of someone retiring and then like a year later they pass away? It's crazy like that. And it's just showing that like our brain, once it's not having to work and having to think all the time and all these like different levels outside of our everyday, our brain doesn't feel the need to be busy and thinking critically and things like that. So the elderly, it has proven that even if they're just read to or if they're reading themselves, it is a great brain exercise for them to keep their mind thinking, same aspects, right? Same empathy and different stories around the world. And they can read more complex stories or knowledge-based text. And so their brain can actually conceptualize things different than a child could. And so it's super important that if you have a youngster or elderly person in your life, that you can still encourage them to either read themselves if they're capable, or listen to you read, or another family member, or anybody. And also there's this wonderful invention called audiobooks, which I highly recommend, because it is a great way that you can set somebody up like this age and say, okay, it's time to read, and have them sit down with an iPad or something like that and listen to a book. Whether you sit down together, whether you have them do it while you cook dinner and you're still in the room, either way, audiobooks are just a huge resource to us these days, and I don't think enough people take advantage of it, and I think it's something really beneficial for others to be able to take on. Reading is also known to improve your concentration and your memory as well. Like I said, sitting down and having to focus on words and be able to comprehend them, it improves your vocabulary, but there's that comprehension piece as well, right? Because you're not just reading words, you're actually having to understand what they're saying, what they're happening. And it's not like when you're in school where you have to read a passage and then answer questions, right, to make sure that you comprehended what was happening. But as we get older and we're reading more novels and things like that, you don't have to take a test at the end, but you're paying attention, because if you don't pay attention to the character building in the beginning and then you're getting to the middle of the book, you're not going to know what's going on. So your comprehension piece is still really important, because you want to make sure that you're paying attention to the story, so as it continues to go on, you understand what is happening and what is going on. And I always like to say, sometimes I think a majority of people will find themselves reading, and then all of a sudden their mind drifts off to something else, and then you just like read a whole page, but you have no idea what you just read. It happens to the best of us. It just, our brain can travel off. So I always just say, you know, go back, reread what you wrote, even though it can be frustrating. It definitely helps with that concentration piece and having you focus. Another great benefit is reading increases your imagination and your writing skills, because you're starting to think about different things outside of the box, especially if you read things like fantasy or science fiction. Those are bringing you to worlds and imagination that is not real, right? So it has your brain expanding to things that aren't really something that could happen, but what would it be like if those things really could happen? What would that life be like? And so in any kind of reading, it expands your imagination to be even above and beyond things that maybe you weren't exposed to while you were growing up. So especially if you're reading things like a memoir, biography, you're now learning about somebody else's life. Like maybe for me, if I was reading about a musician, I would have a whole bunch of content to drift my mind into researching, because I don't know that much about music. So when I hear other people talking about music, it expands my brain to something new that I've never experienced before. So then I can go off and read about things, or listen to different things, or hear things in a different way than maybe I did before. And that itself is increasing your imagination. And then when you bring all these pieces to your writing, you can really start branching out and, you know, adding different vocabulary that you've learned in a book, or a different sequence of words, or a different scene or a character. And it can go in all aspects of your writing. I find that if I have learned a new word in a book, then I learn what it means, and I can now improve that in my writing. Maybe if I'm writing a resume or a report card or an email, like it can come across all different measures of life. And it doesn't just have to be if you're writing a book or you're writing a newspaper article. It can come into your life in text messaging, in a phone conversation. It is a way for you to express yourself now in a different way and build that vocabulary to maybe even become more professional. Be impressing your friends with, you know, a new word that you learned in a conversation. They might think, oh, hey, wow, I never heard her say that word before. Like, she's gaining some knowledge over here. It's not something that necessarily gets pinpointed like right off the bat, but something that is like an afterthought in someone's brain. I know for myself, maybe it's because I'm very literacy oriented, when I hear somebody use a word that is outside of the normal everyday conversation, I do think to myself, wow, that person has knowledge that they've learned, or they have a big vocabulary. They are learning things that maybe not the everyday person is learning. And even when you have those intelligent friends in the conversations and they're bringing that different vocabulary, it also is a great way for you to take that and say, if you didn't know what that word meant, I mean, usually within context, a lot of people can inference and understand what was said. But if it's something really, you know, off the cusp, you can now go home and Google that word and learn a new word for yourself. So I do always encourage people to, you know, use broader vocabulary even when you're speaking to others, because you're now bringing that to somebody else who may have never heard it before. Another great benefit of reading is having stronger analytical skills. So if you ever read a murder mystery or like a whodunit or even like psychological thrillers and things like that, it is a way for your brain to be exercised and starting to think about all the pieces of the puzzle, right? What are the hints that the author is putting in there? What are things that the characters are doing that would have you now analyze what their next steps are going to be, or who is the person who is, you know, at fault, or the murderer, or the mystery person. This is a great way for your brain to think, and I think that's why a lot of people really love, you know, psychological thrillers and mystery stories and things like that, because it's really a great way for your brain to stay engaged in the reading, and it's not just, you know, reading a fluff story and just going with the flow. Those can be great too, but mixing up your genre of reading is a really great way to, you know, keep your brain exercised. Your brain is a muscle and it needs to be exercised. So the more that you are using it to read or fix things or put things together, anything like that, that's why puzzles are also a great thing, because it's making your brain work in different ways instead of just doing your robotic moves every day of, you know, taking care of your body and feeding yourself and exercising and things like that. And there are studies that show that reading does prevent Alzheimer's, dementia, anything like that, where your brain is kind of losing touch with what's happening. So you definitely want to keep those things intact. And just a little side note as well, I did watch an entire documentary once that also gave the inclination that music is also a great piece for anyone in the elderly age bracket, that it can bring back memories from things that they haven't thought about for years. And it's another way for their brain to not only hear the music because it can be pleasant, but also thinking about the words and, you know, triggering those memories and having that inclination to even dance, even if you're in your seat, anything like that. It is a really great thing for the brain to experience and keep the you know, the brain active. So just a little bit of a different spin on my reading today, but I really felt like this was a good one to kind of show you that it's not all about, you know, having all the fun talks about all the books that I'm reading. There's also a lot of benefits to it, and definitely something I make sure that I do every day is I'm reading to my kiddos at my school and my kiddos that are at my home, my own babies. And it's just such an important part of life for me. And so I really want to encourage others to have that same piece for their families and for their students, because it is so, so important. And reading's never going away. Books are never going away. I have my Kindle, I have my phone, I have all those things, but I just don't ever think a hardcover book or a paperback book, they're just never going to be obsolete, at least not in our lifetime. I think there are too many hardcore book lovers out there that it's just not going to be something that happens. There's too many of us out there that are like, nope, we want the real thing. I want to smell the pages. I want to feel the book in my hand. I want to carry it and hold it and have it tangible. And there's just nothing like reading from a physical book. Even though we have now all these other wonderful options, that's all it is. It's just an option, right? So we have options of, you know, iPads and tablets and phones and all those things. Like, books are going to be the same thing. There's just never going to be, in my opinion, or at least in this lifetime, there's just never going to be something digital that's going to be like a picture book. It's just never going to be as cool as like holding it in your hand and being able to pass it around to all your students and feel it and touch it. And like, a screen is great, but I just feel like that tangible piece of it is just never going to go away. So I love that aspect of it, and I want to share that with everybody I can. So if you have any studies or research or articles or anything you want to share on this topic, please comment down below. I would love to have a conversation about it with anybody that is wanting and willing. And I just want to share that piece with you and encourage you to read as much as you can, at least 10 minutes a day, 5 pages if you can. Even listening to an audiobook, audio counts. It definitely counts. Driving in the car, doing your makeup, having your coffee, cooking dinner, doing your laundry, dishes, any of it. Throw on an audiobook. You don't realize how much time you're missing out on where you could actually be reading. So just my little tidbit for today, and I definitely want to hear your comments down below or read your comments down below. So thank you so much for watching this one, and I'll see you in the next one.